Good evening. There is a moment in every crisis, just a heartbeat, really, when the official story and the actual story diverge. When the confident briefing, the carefully worded statement, the reassuring image on your screen meets the cold, hard, unscripted reality of what is actually happening on the ground. And tonight, we are living in that moment. Because while you were going about your day, while the news cycles churned through the usual noise, a significant and deeply troubling development unfolded in a part of the world that demands our absolute attention. 4 United States aircraft struck in rapid succession, not in a simulated exercise, not in a forgotten corner of a training manual, but in the active, volatile, and increasingly dangerous theater of conflict between the United States and Iran. This isn't just a headline. This is a signal, a stark, unambiguous signal that the assumptions underpinning a major American military posture may be fundamentally and dangerously wrong. And for a president who has built his political identity on a brand of uncompromising triumphant strength, this new reality presents a problem that cannot be spun away with a tweet or a rally speech. So let's take a breath. Let's pull this thread. And let's understand, step by careful step, what just happened, why it matters far beyond the immediate tactical loss, and what it tells us about the precarious position we find ourselves in tonight. To understand the weight of this news, we need to briefly rewind. The tensions between the United States and Iran have been a slow-burning fuse for years, punctuated by moments of intense flare-ups. The drone strike that killed Qasem Soleimani, the subsequent Iranian missile barrage at Ain al-Assad Air Base, the shadow war in the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. Through it all, the public narrative from the highest levels of the U.S. government, particularly from President Trump, has often been one of dominant, unchallenged American power. A narrative of maximum pressure yielding results, of adversaries being brought to heel, of a military so overwhelmingly superior that any confrontation is, by definition, a foregone conclusion. This narrative is politically potent, it's simple, it's reassuring, and for a significant portion of the public, it has been accepted as the operational truth. But militaries don't operate on narratives. They operate on intelligence, on logistics, on the cold calculus of capability and counter-capability. And the reports we are receiving tonight from multiple credible sources within the defense and intelligence communities suggest that the reality on the ground in the region is far more complex and far more dangerous than the public narrative has allowed. The incident itself, as it is being pieced together, reads like a case study in modern asymmetric warfare. We are not talking about a single lucky shot from the outdated missile system. We are talking about 4 separate U.S. aircraft reports indicate a mix of surveillance drones and possibly a manned support aircraft being targeted and hit within a compressed time frame. The locations are sensitive. We cannot disclose them for operational security reasons, but they are within the sphere of Iranian influence and operational reach. The methods appear varied. Some hits are attributed to sophisticated mobile surface-to-air missile systems, others to coordinated electronic warfare attacks that degraded navigation and communication links, making the aircraft vulnerable. This is not a ragtag militia firing blindly into the sky. This is a coordinated multi-domain response from a state actor that has spent years studying U.S. tactics, investing in specific counter technologies, and learning from every previous encounter. The material losses are significant, of course. Each of these platforms represents millions of dollars in technology and, more importantly, the risk to American service members' lives. But the true cost here is measured in information. Every strike, every successful interception or disruption provides Tehran with invaluable data. Data on U.S. flight patterns, on communication protocols, on the vulnerabilities of our systems when pushed in a contested environment. This is how a less conventionally powerful force levels the playing field. Not by matching us dollar for dollar, but by being smarter, more adaptive, and more willing to absorb risk in pursuit of a strategic objective, making the cost of American air operations prohibitively high. And this is where the story takes a turn that should give anyone, regardless of political affiliation, serious pause, because the most revealing part of this development isn't just that Iran can still hit our aircraft. Many analysts have long argued they retained that capability. The revelation is about timing and about intent. These strikes did not come during a declared hot war. They did not come in retaliation for a single massive overt act. They came now in this period of heightened tension but ambiguous conflict, and according to sources familiar with the internal assessments, they appear to be a deliberate, calibrated message from Tehran to Washington. The message is not, we can hurt you, but message is, we are watching, we are learning, and we will respond on our own terms in our own time to your actions. It is a message of strategic patience and tactical agility. And it directly challenges a core premise of the current U.S. approach, that sustained pressure and the threat of overwhelming force will eventually force an adversary to capitulate or make a fatal miscalculation. What if the adversary's calculation is different? What if they believe that absorbing some pain while inflicting steady, symbolic, and militarily meaningful costs on the stronger power is actually a winning strategy? This is the hidden angle of tonight's news. It's not just about 4 aircraft. It's about a clash of strategic doctrines. And the early returns suggest the doctrine predicated on adaptability and asymmetric response may be gaining an edge in this particular theater. So why does this matter? Let's connect the dots, Maddow style. First, it matters for the immediate safety of our personnel. Every mission flown in a region where an adversary has demonstrated a renewed and effective capability to target aircraft is a mission with a higher quantifiable risk. The families of those service members deserve a strategy that is based on a clear-eyed assessment of that risk, not on political bravado. Second, it matters for the credibility of American deterrence. Deterrence only works if your adversary believes you can and will impose costs they cannot bear, and that you yourself are not vulnerable to unacceptable costs in return. If Iran believes it can repeatedly strike U.S. assets without triggering a response that fundamentally alters its own strategic position, then the deterrent effect of American power in the region begins to erode. This invites more probing, more testing, more escalation. It creates a dangerous cycle. Third, and this is the big picture item, it matters for our global posture. The United States cannot be everywhere at once. Our military, for all its might, is stretched. An adversary that can tie down significant U.S. air and intelligence assets in one region, forcing us to divert resources to force protection and retaliation planning, is an adversary that gains advantages elsewhere. It complicates our planning in the Indo-Pacific. It affects our readiness in Europe. It strains our logistics chains globally. This is how a regional conflict can have worldwide ripple effects, straining focus and resources from other critical priorities. Furthermore, this development exposes a profound tension at the heart of modern American statecraft, the gap between political messaging and military reality. A president who has consistently framed complex international challenges as simple contests of will, who has equated toughness with success, now faces a situation that cannot be simplified. You cannot tweet a solution to a sophisticated integrated air defense network. You cannot hold a rally to fix a vulnerability in data link encryption. The tools of political communication are often blunted instruments when applied to the finely engineered problems of modern warfare. This creates a precarious position. The instinct may be to double down on the rhetoric, to promise an overwhelming response that reasserts dominance. But the military planners on the ground are now working with a new sobering data point. The adversary is more capable, more resilient, and more strategically patient than previously advertised in the public narrative. Any response must now account for that reality, or risk escalating a conflict in ways that could quickly spiral beyond anyone's control. This is the unenviable calculus that lands on the desk of the commander-in-chief tonight. Not a choice bet. We ain't looking strong or looking weak, but a series of grim, complex choices about risk, escalation, and the very definition of what constitutes winning in a conflict that has no clear front lines and no obvious off-ramp. Now, you might be asking, this is happening thousands of miles away. Why should I care? How does this affect my life? That is a completely fair question. The direct, immediate impact on your daily routine may seem minimal, but the indirect effects are profound, and they touch almost every aspect of our national life. First, there is the economic dimension. The Strait of Hormuz, through which a significant portion of the world's seaborne oil passes, remains a flashpoint. Any escalation that threatens the free flow of energy resources can send shockwaves through global markets, affecting gasoline prices, supply chains, and ultimately your wallet at the pump and the grocery store. Second, there is the budgetary dimension. Every aircraft lost, every missile fired in response, every additional ship deployed to the region costs money. A lot of money that is not being spent on infrastructure, on education, on healthcare, on the domestic priorities that shape the quality of life in your community. Endless Open-ended military engagements have a profound opportunity cost, one that is paid by taxpayers and by future generations. Third, and perhaps most importantly, there is the moral and strategic dimension. As a country, we have to ask ourselves what kind of power we want to be. Do we want to be a power that reacts impulsively to every provocation, potentially locking ourselves into cycles of violence that serve no long-term interest? Or do we want to be a power that exercises strategic patience, that uses its immense capabilities with precision and purpose, and that always keeps the ultimate goal, lasting security and stability for our people and our allies, firmly in sight? The decisions made in response to events like tonight's news will shape that identity for years to come. They will shape the world your children inherit. So let's sit with that for a moment. Let's allow the weight of this to settle, because the most important questions are not the ones we can answer tonight. They are the ones we must begin to ask. What is the actual achievable objective of U.S. policy toward Iran? Is it regime change? Is it merely containing its regional influence? Is it preventing a nuclear weapon? And if it is the latter, does a strategy that increases the risk of a conventional conflict, which could itself spiral in unpredictable ways, actually serve that goal? Furthermore, how do we, as a democratic society, ensure that our public debate about these life and death decisions is based on facts, on sober analysis, and on a clear understanding of the trade-offs, rather than on political theater or simplified narratives of good versus evil? The information we received tonight is a piece of a much larger puzzle. It is a data point that should force a reevaluation, a recalibration. But reevaluation requires a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. It requires leadership that values strategic clarity over short-term political gain. And that leads us to what we will be watching for in the hours and days ahead. First, the official response. Will it be a measured strategic communication that acknowledges the complexity of the situation and outlines a thoughtful path forward? Or will it be a reflexive escalatory statement designed for domestic political consumption? The tone and substance of that response will tell us a great deal about the decision-making process at the highest levels. Second, we will be watching the region itself. How does Iran interpret the U.S. response? Do they see it as a sign of resolve, or as a sign of predictable, manipulable anger? Their next move will be incredibly telling. And third, we will be watching the institutions that are supposed to provide oversight and guidance in these moments. The Congress, the intelligence committees, the senior military leadership. Will they fulfill their constitutional and professional roles in ensuring a strategy that is sustainable, lawful, and aligned with our long-term interests? Or will they be sidelined by a politics of perpetual crisis? Tonight's news is not an endpoint. It is a pivot point. It is a moment where the story we have been told about American invincibility and adversary collapse meets the stubborn, complicated reality of a determined foe in a complex environment. It is a reminder that in the realm of national security, there are no easy answers, no simple victories, and no substitutes for rigorous, honest, and strategic thinking. The safety of our service members, the stability of a volatile region, and the prudent use of American power on the global stage depend on our ability to navigate this moment with clarity, with courage, and with a commitment to truth over narrative. That is a tall order, but it is the only order that will see us through. We will continue to follow this story with the seriousness it deserves. We will bring you verified information, context, and analysis, not speculation and hype. Because in a time of tension, the most radical act is to insist on understanding. Thank you for spending this time with us. Please stay curious, stay engaged, and good night.